couple of years. Theirs lasted longer, and they only had one chap working on it.
Interesting, really interesting. So we're right in the heart of the 17th century. I'm going to go to Julian next, because we know about the importance of astrology and astrological publishing through the English Stock Company to this company. I mean, much of its wealth was built and it was underpinned by those 17th century beliefs. But how do we see that reflected here in the hall, in its redesign, on the rebuild? What's significant about that time and this site?
Thank you, Carol. I think firstly, a little overview of what 17th century belief was actually like and how people used to think around this time. Astrology most definitely played a part in the building of the 1673 hall. At that time, Plato and Aristotle's theory was still the primary belief system, that the earth was at the center, still and unmoving, around which were 7 interlocking crystalline spheres of light, making up the celestial 7 heavens above. Via this geocentric viewpoint, humanity found its link to God, the divine creator at the very center of being, through perceiving layers of consciousness emanating outwards, the 7 visible planets imagined as rotating spheres. Medieval and Renaissance life was thus lived at the center of a cosmic bubble of creation. And for stationers, we have a familiar phrase, vita humana bulla est, life is but a bubble. It is very likely that Richard Johnson, who died 228 years ago, was aware of the changing viewpoint of the world as the scientific view took hold, and left a legacy for the annual St. Bride's service to remind us of the original geocentric view. In the 17th century, most people who could read owned 2 books, a Bible and an almanac, to keep close to God by observing the movements of the heavens, day to day, month to month, and season to season. The company was able to create great wealth from publishing almanacs because a new one was needed by everybody annually. Not only did these give celestial advice and insights, but also horticultural information, growing seasons and lunar phases. As the scientific viewpoint took over, from the early 18th century onwards, materialistic, reductionist, and objectivist viewpoints began to dominate, as the natural wonders of creation were picked apart and gradually discarded. Almanacs turned into desk diaries and daily newspapers. And the sacred knowledge of the planets as mirroring life on Earth was overrun by a new understanding of the world, which was mostly disenchanted. Much of the mystical qualities of God found in nature were explained away by rationalism. Now, in the 21st century, many are calling for a return to spiritual values through care of the environment, sustainability, and management of natural resources. It is also, or is it also, a time for a return to the use of astrology as the ancient guiding system and a more geocentric approach? So that's a little bit about 17th century belief. But now let's look at how astrology informs many features of this great building we are so fortunate to enjoy. I'm going to take your attention now to the exterior of the Great Hall. When you arrive here each time and you walk into the courtyard outside, I want you to pay attention to what is above these 4 windows. And the first slide, please, thank you very much, is that is the first slide. So what we're going to be looking at here is the idea of the external putti who are with zodiac signs. Okay, so if you can see that there, that's the first one, which is above this window here. So there's a putti above this window in a roundel, and beside it, you can see the putti, there's a figure of a ram. I don't know if you can see that there, top left, top right of the picture. There's a picture of a ram. With the next one, this window here, there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see there a putti holding a scythe, but with the crab just in front of its face there. That's Cancer the crab. That's the summer solstice. I'll talk about them more in a minute, the seasons. Then we have the middle window, which is a griffin, which is not, there's no slide for that, but that's griffins with a cup. The next window, which is this one here, is, next slide, yep, you can see the putti with a pair of scales, which is Libra. And then the last putti, which is actually in a covered up window, was the Capricorn. And if you look at that one, you'll see there's a goat with the putti who is putting on a pair of ice skates. I'll explain that in a minute. Firstly, let me tell you a bit about putti. So in the ancient classical world, they are physical manifestations of invisible essences, and they were believed to influence human lives. They reflect both the Roman genius spirit and the Greek's daimon, the two types of messenger spirit, being halfway between the human and the divine. Mostly depicted as winged infants, they represent fertility, abundance, the spirit of the fruit of life, and wild revelry. We find their form in various places, including the Greek Eros and the Roman Amor or Cupid, the god of love and companion of Aphrodite or Venus. They are the messengers of the heavens, bringing peace, prosperity, mirth, and leisure. The examples on our hall do not have wings, possibly indicating that their spirit is grounded within the structure. Thus, the profusion of putti in the high Baroque architecture of the 17th century represent the omnipresence of God. And here at Stationers' Hall, we have putti clearly depicted with 4 specific signs of the zodiac, suggesting astrology and the understanding of the stars' links to the divine and the heavens above. Each zodiac sign marks the beginning of a season. So Aries, the ram, this window, marks the vernal equinox, the spring equinox. Cancer, the crab, for the summer solstice. The third, Libra, the scales, for the autumn equinox, and Capricorn, the goat, for winter. Now, a little bit more on the idea of how the sun creates the seasons is if you walk through Temple Bar and into Paternoster Square, you can see the sundial on the far wall up high. You can see a sundial. It's a modern sculpture, but it's there. If you walk through Temple Bar, it's straight ahead and up ahead. The crossing point of the figure of 8 in that sculpture is the spring and autumn equinox, which is the equal day and night. The top of the short loop is the winter solstice. The bottom loop is the summer solstice. And if you spend some time to look at that, you'll see the months marked out, and you'll understand that the seasons are the points, the vital points of that sculpture. So in spring, we have new life, plants bursting out of the ground, seeds sprouting, and buds appearing on the trees right now. It's, in fact, the sun is in Aries today. It is the beginning of spring. Summer brings an abundance of growth, blossoming, and fruition. In autumn, we harvest, select, and weigh up produce, which is Libra, the scales. Winter brings hard, frozen ground and long, cold nights before the eventual return of the light and the warmth. The principle of astrology is that the movement of the planets in the heavens above is reflected like a mirror on the earth below. Primarily, one also sees this growth within oneself. The putti carry the fruits of the seasons. If you go through the slides again, you can see they all have like cornucopias of plenty in each round. except for the winter putti, who is putting on ice skates, suggesting that the fun was to be had by going to one of the ice fairs held on the River Thames during the winter. The spiritual symbolic meaning of putti and the zodiac signs depicted together is that we have the combination of the messenger spirits of revelry and love depicted on the exterior of the Great Hall, indicating how the celebration of life, of the love of all good things, as found in astrology, could have been found within this hall. In the 17th century and in Abergavenny House before the fire, there would have been astrologers as members and discussions of the influence of the planets. They would have discussed it over the dinners consistently because it was the ancient belief system. Much of the writing of almanacs would have occurred in this very hall. The putti and zodiac symbolism together indicates that inside, the spiritual connection to the heavens could be felt, experienced, and enjoyed. There is something about the combination of putti with the zodiac signs that suggests the putti are going beyond mere ornamentation and static embellishment. These delightful little figures show the innocence of childhood and in true symbolic fashion are the key for the observer to see its way to connect to the divine and to the creator. Now let's look at the slide, please, of the lion's face. Yep, thank you. This is the lion's face roundel. Above the blue doors, you'll find this in the courtyard outside. It is a lion's face in the sun's beams. The lion in zodiac symbology represents the sun, which is the light giver, the bringer of warmth and the essence of life as a growth cycle. The Leo month runs from July the 21st to August the 22nd and tends to be the warmest when the fruit on the vine ripens, ready to be harvested. So we see in this image a lion's face set inside flower petals to indicate growth and flourishing. The blue doors of the hall face in the same direction and relatively close in position to Ludgate, the western entrance to the city. In the summer months, there is a large amount of sunshine along Fleet Street from the west, illuminating St. Paul's in a golden glow. The alignment of the lion's face to the west indicates the outpouring of this light. When the blue doors are opened, the stationers in their livery reflect it as they walk westwards into the city towards St. Paul's. This is a symbolic example of the proud and glorious Leo or the royal or the sun symbolism found in the company's traditional events. And now to come to the interior of the hall and to draw your attention to the Caxton window, which is the most glorious piece of stained glass. Now, next time you look at the Caxton window, take a little while to notice a striking bit of sun-lion symbolism concealed in the king's breastplate. Focus on the golden yellow part, and looking at all the markings and shadings, you might start to perceive a hidden lion's face. Also, the interior carved wooden crowns in the hall reflect on the power of royal symbolism. In astrology, the sun, the light giver. And now, please, to the next slide. I'd also like to mention tonight the astrological symbolism of the stationer's company crest. Eagles are astrologically ruled by the planet Jupiter. And in this symbolic picture, you can see the king of the gods. This is an ancient picture of Jupiter. The king of the gods' chariot is being drawn by a pair of eagles. The planet Jupiter is associated in astrology with various rulerships, including publishing, faith, belief, and religion. The King James Bible was drafted in this hall. Education, we have the Stationers' Crowns Woods Academy. Broadcast and wider distribution of knowledge and learning are all under the rulership of Jupiter. So, the flying eagle holding a book in its talons symbolizes Zeus, the king of the gods. In Roman times, Jupiter was called Optimus Maximus. In medieval times, it was called Major Fortuna, and in the Renaissance, it was called the Greater Benefic. A Jupiter symbol brings great blessings to our company. In summary, the hall reflects hidden meanings, typical of the beliefs held in the 17th century when it was built. I hope my talk has awakened some curiosity among members who might start to see this great hall in a new light.
Thank you, Julian. One of the things that those of us who do tours of the hall, and I know there's a number of you in the audience today, is you learn quite a lot about symbolism. Much of this was completely new to me, but I did know that the eagle is reflected here because it flies highest in the sky, so it's closest to God. And I also know that we've got some other birds in the courtroom, in the plasterwork by the fireplace, and those are ho-ho birds, and they're symbols of good fortune, quite allied to the phoenix. So there's a lot of symbolism that we just don't realize because we just walk past it every day, and it's nice to have it aired slightly for tonight. It may prompt some other questions. I think, Ruth, also, you and I were looking into the stained glass windows, weren't we? Particularly Master Butterworth, who donated the Caxton window, and then Master Waller, who was responsible for some of these other windows. And it really was one-upmanship, I think we agreed, didn't we?
Completely, yes.
Yeah. As to who would donate which window. And that Caxton window took less than a year from the idea of the donation to being fitted. So it is amazing. And now there's a little bit of symbolism with it, which is interesting. But now we've talked about the building and the exterior and interior of this wonderful hall. Margaret, can you talk to us a little bit about how the hall was used? How has its use developed? Perhaps you could shed a little bit of light on that for us.
So the hall, the hall in general, obviously has different parts, the stock room, etc. But we're now in the dining hall, and feasts were held here.